There are some iOS interview questions that always seem to come up. So what are the answers for those? Let's take a look. So a common question is, how might optionals be implemented in Swift? Or a variation is, how do Apple implement optionals in Swift? And the answer is in Enum, you either have none or some of a type. So there's an opportunity to use generics there and to talk about generics. And Apple certainly do that, and you can see that because the Swift source code is open source. So, a common question is, how does Swift handle concurrency? Now the first thing is, concurrency is multiple operations running in the same time space, not necessarily in the same time, which would be parallel. And a good way to handle that is with Grand Central Dispatch, GCD, which is where you can allocate different queues. So you might want to talk at this point about the main queue and perform user interactive operations on the main queue, which ensures that the user is always getting a good quality of service, their screen doesn't freeze and you avoid crashes, etc. An alternative to Grand Central Dispatch is Operation Queue, which is a abstraction built on Grand Central Dispatch and gives you some other granular details like starting and stopping individual operations. And then you can go into more detail from there. Link in the description. So, a common question is, how do you resolve a memory leak? And the first part of this question is understanding what a memory leak is. And in Swift, memory management is controlled by arc, which is reference counting. So when we have reference types, classes, where there's a strong reference to a class, the counter is incremented by 1. When a strong reference is removed, the counter is decremented by 1. And when the counter reaches 0, an object is released. So if there are two classes with strong references to each other, then the counter will never become 0 and the objects are never released. That's a problem. It can even cause crashes, or it can keep using memory in the app that it shouldn't be and degrade the user experience. So practically what we often do is, this often occurs in closures, and we use weak self-in to solve the problem. So instead of having a strong reference, we have a weak reference. However, this question is really asking for people to think about instruments. And you can get instruments to tell you if you have persistent objects, and a persistent object is potentially an object that's always there that you might not want, that you can track. And you can also see the memory usage doing actions like putting a view controller on the stack 10 or 20 times and seeing if the memory is increasing and then decreasing as you remove them. So there are several things you can do, and bringing in instruments as an answer to an interview question is generally a good thing. So you might be asked how you resolve performance issues within a production app. And it's actually quite tricky, because what does performance mean? It might mean graphical performance. Things like calling draw unnecessarily might slow things down, for example. Or you might have slow drawing. For slow drawing, you can use core animation instrument. Code can be slow. You can think about stack traces, caching unnecessarily or in an inadequate way, and, like the clip just before, retain cycles, because retain cycles can affect performance as well as cause crashes. There might be network performance problems. You might want to batch requests or consider how to format the back-end responses to make things more efficient. It would be helpful here to draw on your own experience and maybe have an example from your previous or last few roles and a real app that you've had performance issues in and how you've solved it. So bounds is the coordinates within the view's coordinate space, so from the point of view of the view you're talking about, whereas frame is the coordinates from the superview's perspective, so in the superview's coordinate space. Well, that's just 5 possible questions that might come up. with the answers. And if you'd like some more, there's a link in the description to a rather big document with lots of questions that you might like to look through. Anyway, if you've got an interview soon, good luck with it, and maybe see you next time.